information to help you run your business better and improve your marketing campaigns. My name is Hank Hoffmeyer, and thank you for joining me on Hank's Marketing and Business Tips. Welcome to episode 292 of the HMBT podcast. I'm joined by a local guest, even though we're sitting here in front of our cameras. We're both local in North Carolina. Today I'm joined by Bolaji Oyejide. He is a content creator and a master of crafting binge-worthy content experiences that put the audience at the center of the narrative. He's a creator of The Demand Wars, which is like Survivor meets Hunger Games for B2B marketers. We'll show you how you can tune into that later because I know you're dying to watch that. But he also has a track record of developing content campaigns that build affinity, community, engagement, and more importantly, demand. Thanks for joining me today, Bolaji. I think we're going to have a great conversation around content and something that we discussed off camera, which is something you need to do before the funnel or before you get people into the funnel. It's going to be an exciting episode.
Awesome. Man, that was a heck of an intro. Thank you for having me on. And how about it takes us connecting over a podcast to actually get together, even though we live in the same city.
Yeah, we're getting together on this podcast episode before we meet in real life to have a coffee, drink, meal, or something like that. But I think it's important for us to talk about marketing and what to do when you're trying to get people into your funnel, because my audience wants to hear that. And before we have that coffee, let's get out some great ideas for the audience, and then we can celebrate over that coffee later.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, we're both local here in North Carolina. We're going to meet up soon, but there's this thing that you have. It's a show that you shared with me, Demand Wars. Tell me a little bit about Demand Wars and what you do for a living.
Yeah. So Demand Wars kind of has an interesting origin story. I've been in B2B marketing for the past 15 or so years, primarily as a demand generation marketer. For those who may not be familiar, a demand gen marketer is essentially the individual who goes out, finds people that are interested in the product, and then gets them into this process or marketing funnel where you progressively teach them more and more about the product until they're ready to actually buy the product. Having done demand gen for about 15 years, though, I started to feel like there were certain things broken in how companies were doing demand gen. Let me put it this way, Hank. If you've ever sat through a timeshare presentation, or even my wife and I are in the process of buying a new car, if you've ever been to a dealership to buy a car, demand gen is starting to feel like that. And so I started to explore different ways, maybe almost human ways, by which we could still achieve those business objectives without treating people like a number in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I think, today's age, we're always talking about personalizing marketing, especially with email marketing, which is what I do. You can send out an email to everybody and not personalize it, or you can inject the first name or other information, and it creates somewhat of a relationship or a conversation. And when you mentioned, demand gen, to me, I think of it as creating a demand for your brand, which is a good thing, right? Or you can think of it on the negative side of demanding people's attention so that they buy from you, right? That's the negative way of doing it. The best thing to do is create brand awareness, brand affinity, like I said in the intro, and trust, and hopefully people will come and need and want what you have. And you and I are going to be using a lot of these buzzwords and words that you need to live by, because that is important. And I think you hit the nail on the head, and things are changing where companies need to make money right away, because small businesses will go out of business if they can't make their lease, if they have a brick and mortar, or pay their bills or pay for advertising. And larger companies have shareholders to account for, right? And if they're not doing well, they may go out of business, get sold, or acquired from someone else. So that begs the question, how do we do demand gen right? And how can we learn to do it in a way where we're creating it in a positive fashion rather than trying to, like you said earlier, shove people into the funnel?
Right. That's such an important and valuable way of framing it, Hank, because at the end of the day, all for-profit businesses are created to generate profit. Now, you ideally want to do that in an ethical, legal, and moral way. You want to do that in a way that actually solves a real problem for your audience of choice and does it to a level of quality to the point where they want to come back and buy more from you. Okay, so we're in the business of creating and generating profits, but we want to do it in a certain type of way. You've outlined some realities about small businesses that need to make payroll, make their expenses every month, or larger businesses that need to answer to venture capitalists and investors. We don't always have the luxury of taking the scenic route, even if it's going to be better for us. Sometimes we need to do the blocking and tackling just to, get those numbers to match at the end of the month. So for those of us who are in those very tight constraints, here's one thing that I think is really valuable. You got to have a superpower. You got to become known for one thing. I've been an entrepreneur. I've had side hustles for as long as I can remember. Even in college, I was developing websites for people running for SGA president. I get it. I've run a lot of businesses. Running a business is hard. Small business is difficult. It's challenging. You can't do all the things you want to do. The ones that succeed, they typically solve not just one problem, but one urgent problem for their audience. I've heard it phrased this way, Hank: sell painkillers, not vitamins. And it's an analogy. I'm not encouraging anybody to sell drugs. But if you do, sell painkillers, not vitamins. We all could benefit from vitamins. Vitamins are great. I just took mine today, but I probably skipped the last couple of days. But if I have a headache today, I almost don't care, Hank, what brand it is. I need that solution right away. So figure out what your painkiller solution is, what your superpower is, and then make sure everybody knows about it.
That's great. Yeah, and I think figuring out what people need and want and making sure they know that you're there for them. And I know it's a little bit of a digression from what you just said, but I remembered watching a video around and I forget the name of the brand. I should remember it, because of what I'm about to tell you. But it's two guys that were in college that started a window washing company. And they started doing a lot of crazy stuff on social media, branded shirts, branded van. Just basically their brand was all up in your face. So if you see them cleaning windows, you're going to see them in their brand, and you're going to call them if you're local, right? Or if you saw them online, you'd want to call them. So yeah, number one, I think you need to sell somebody that painkiller or solve that problem for them or that need, but also you need to have really good brand recognition, and I think that maybe you're saying have a tagline too. For me, and I'm gonna struggle to remember where I got this from. It's his name will come to me, but he's the rapid growth guy, right? So right there, that's his painkiller, right? If you're a small business or a business you want to grow, he's your rapid growth guy, and it'll come to me in a minute. But for me, I had to go through that whole exercise, and maybe it's a little cheesy, but people come up to me and say, "What are you doing?" They don't want to hear an elevator pitch, right? Who wants to be stuck in an elevator to hear what somebody does? Where it needs to be like a value proposition. For me, hey Hank, what do you do? Well, I'm the digital marketing infotainer. I like to make marketing fun and successful. Yeah. What I'm trying to do is help people do marketing so that they like it and that they're successful in doing it. That would be my painkiller. And I think everybody should have some kind of a tagline that's not necessarily an elevator pitch.
You're right. No, you're 100% right. Hank, I spent about 9 years, you and I are both parents, we're both dads. I spent about 9 years when my kids were younger writing kid superhero books. Because I grew up on Marvel and DC Comics halfway across the world, by the way, in Nigeria, talking about branding, right? And all the superheroes, as a comic book fan, it doesn't have to be comic books. You could be a stamp collector or a sports fan or into particular music. You have not just the genre that you like, you have the individual that you like. And you could recognize the first few bars from whether it's a Taylor Swift song or a Beyonce song or a Kanye song, old Kanye, not the current Kanye. I don't mess with the current Kanye. But you know when your song comes on or your TV, your favorite show comes on, you recognize it right away. So we could call it a tagline. It could manifest as a tagline. It could manifest as your brand colors. It could manifest as something else. But we have to have a very easy way of identifying, oh, that's not Coke, that's Pepsi. I don't mess with Coke. I'm a Pepsi person. Find that. The only thing is, don't build you want to build your house on solid ground, not on sand. So don't necessarily solve the problem that you care about. Solve the problem that your audience, solve a hair on fire problem for your audience, and you'll be in good shape.
All right. First, I got to back up. It is Matthew Pollard, the rapid growth guy. He's actually local here in North Carolina as well. Audience, go check him out. He's a really nice guy. He's got a lot of great insights and information and helps people grow. He's got a couple books out. The Introvert's Edge, which is a book about people that are introverts. They're probably better at selling than extroverts. Really interesting read. I read it. And what you're saying is, resonate people and then solve the pain. I love this episode because I feel like we're like moving along here. And since you're from North Carolina, you may have listened to the radio, right? Does this sound familiar to you? Crazy Kevin Powell. Have you heard that one?
Yes.
All right. So what is he? He's trying to solve the problem of people that have bad credit that want to buy a car, right? I remember that because of that jingle.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
So for those that don't know, Crazy Kevin Powell has a couple car dealerships in North Carolina and the surrounding areas, and his thing is he's going to give you a lot more for your trade-in, and regardless of your credit history, he wants to give you a loan. I don't know if he can follow through on that for everybody, but that's his spiel, and he does a radio commercial for that, and he always opens it up. Crazy Kevin Powell here. That reminds me of Crazy Eddie, which used to be an electronics store years and years ago in New Jersey. I don't know if they had them everywhere, but there was a guy that got on and be like, I'm giving this away. This is on sale. And he was like acting crazy in front of the camera and being memorable. And that's something we need to do, is make sure that our brand is memorable and we're solving a problem or a pain and giving people a solution. And we're talking about this, and this is all before the funnel, right? Getting them into the funnel. So question for you: if we have all this attention and we have this solution to pain, we have this painkiller, how do we turn that into giving that information about that painkiller or relieving that pain? How do we get them into the funnel and start nurturing them to actually do business with us?
This is a Pandora's box here, Hank. Here's the thing. When the term demand generation first started being used in the business-to-business space, maybe 15 years ago or so, this is when I was getting into the industry, we didn't realize that the term really could be interpreted in a couple of different ways. And we also some of us maybe didn't realize how demand actually works. So here's the challenge. Let's pretend, for example, that crazy Kevin Powell, right? I hear his ad on the radio. He's funny. He's memorable. He's solving a very distinct problem, right? His ad is on several times a day. So there's recall there. There's brand recall. But what if I'm not in the market for a car at all? Is there something that Crazy Kevin could say? Is there something in his copywriting, something in his gift of gab that could take me from not being in the market for a car, which is an expensive purchase, by the way, to suddenly being in the market for a car? Unless you're talking about sort of impulse purchases, it's actually not very common that we can take someone who's not in the market and influence them just based off of our ability to convince someone and our persuasion skills, convince them to come into the market. Instead, what we want to be doing is identifying people who are already in the market or who are likely to come into the market soon. And you could use different signals to sort of figure out whether in the market, if they're driving a 25-year-old beater, chances are in the next year or two, they might be in the market. Hey, if they have a high school sophomore or junior, like both Hank and I do, it's quite possible they might need another car, probably a used one. So you could use signals to figure out people who are going to be in the market soon, and then you target your messaging to them. That way, you're not spending money on reaching the whole market. The whole market doesn't want to buy your product today.
Right.
But here's a caveat. even though the whole market doesn't want to buy your product today, like I'm not in the market for Crazy Kevin Powell today, it's possible that at some point, maybe in 5 years, I will be. Should Crazy Kevin totally ignore me until I enter the market and I'm maybe researching his competitors at that point? Or should he find some sort of way to engage me in relationship where he's not trying to push product, but we do have some sort of dialogue going? That's the trick. That's the secret. If you can find, I like to say, whoever has the most proximity to the customer wins. Whatever brand has the most proximity to the customer wins. How can you have proximity to your audience even before they're ready to buy? That's the whole idea of thinking before the funnel. That way, if they not only know your brand, they know what you solve, and they like you, as soon as they step into the market, you don't even have to like have a timely ad. They already remember. I'm like, okay, we're about to buy a car next month. We're going to need a loan. Credit's not looking great. What was his name again? Crazy Kevin, what was it? Let's call him up. So you need to find a way to not only be memorable, but actually have a relationship with the broader marketplace, have some dialogue with them so that once they're ready to enter the market, they already know who you are, what you do, and they like you.
I like that. You got the gears in my brain turning because he's really good at being memorable. In other words, I hear the radio ads and I may need a car a year from now. I'll probably remember Crazy Kevin Powell. I'll do a Google search, right? And maybe find him. Or maybe I know someone who's looking for a car for their teen or something. I might say, well, hey, I heard this radio ad, but how do we get people that maybe are either teetering or not really, they can purchase now, but maybe we need to convince them that they need to. And I loved your idea of honing in on your audiences. I recently got a little bit more involved in real estate. And one thing I want to do is find what's called distressed properties, people that need to sell their home pretty quickly. And one thing I realized and I learned I can do is run Facebook ads. Right now, I wouldn't want to run ads just saying, hey, do you want to sell a home? Because maybe you're not ready to sell your home because maybe you've just moved in 2 years ago and you're going to stay there for 20 years. But what are some of the biggest audiences for people that need to sell distressed properties? And I didn't know this going in. And when I said I know I need to do ads, but to who? People that are getting divorced, right? They may want to sell the house and divide up the money, or or whatever they need to do with that. People that have medical bills, right? And it's getting out of control. And then maybe I just had another one in my brain too that just flew out of my brain, but that maybe they're moving or something. And in Facebook, we know, but not everybody knows. You can highly target on Facebook based on those audiences and have a different message or different copywriting for each of those. In other words, I wouldn't want to say, are you moving soon, to somebody that is getting a divorce, right? That's not the kind of message they want. But what you could say is, hey, it's tough times. You may be going through a change in your life right now where you need to make some difficult decisions. If you want to sell your home, I'm here ready to help you. I can give you cash on demand right away. Set up a call by clicking on a link below or something like that. And you're like we were talking about earlier, that hopefully offering to solve a pain for somebody by buying their house really quickly. This way they can just move on into the next chapter of their life.
That's good. That's a really good example. You've got the targeting there. And, to your point, there's targeting that can be done digitally on Facebook that may not be as easily available in other avenues, but there's still proxies. There's still ways. We used to do business before everything went digital, and we were able to do a lot of these sorts of things in different sorts of ways. So let's say, for example, let's go back to Crazy Kevin Powell, that instance. So one of the audiences he might sell to, as we've just talked about, is families with a new teenage driver in the house. Well, what if he targeted that audience before that teen? Like, I have a 14-year-old as well. We're 14 and a half. So we're just about to start teaching him to drive. He is a year and a half away from having a full license, right? But what if Crazy Kevin Powell targeted us? Maybe he partnered with driving schools
I was
Or he
thinking the same exact thing.
but
It's so
weren't you
funny.
right? Partner with driving schools, and maybe he's not necessarily talking about credit right away, but he's sort of adding other value to families who have these teenagers. Let me think off the top of my head. As a parent who has a 14-and-a-half-year-old that I've not put behind the wheel yet, I'm nervous. What do I need to teach him first? Should I start in a school parking lot? Should I start in a stationary car and teach him how to use the mirrors and adjust the seat? Should I scare him? What are those where they take kids to jail, like scared straight? Should I scare him straight? Like, if you mess around, you're going to run someone over, and that's probably not advisable. But Crazy Kevin could actually start to provide community workshops that are for young people, make it fun. He's not selling credit services at all.
Right.
But those are the exact people that 2 years from now will need credit services.
I
So
was
those
going
are
to
some
ask
ways.
you, how does Crazy Kevin Powell have that dialogue and that relationship,
Yeah,
like you were saying? And there's
yeah,
one example. Another one could
yeah.
be offering information on how to choose the right insurance for your teen, right? Because it's a lot
Love that. Oh,
different. Well, a lot
yeah.
of things, yeah. And have what I guess we're going to call them lead magnets, right? Tell
There
us,
you
for a
go.
radio ad, give them a URL, crazykevinpowell.com/insurance or whatever. Then obviously get them
Cars,
on the
used cars.
newsletter. Yeah,
Used cars. What are the best used cars? What are the safest used cars to buy for your
for a teen.
teenager? Don't go buy a 2024 Lexus. Here are the top 7 cars that keep your teenager safe. I want to know that.
That's Google Gold right there too.
Yeah. So, that's just a goofy example, but it shows how if you actually start to obsess about your audience and what's keeping them up at night, way before you're trying to sell your product, you can actually help them for free. And now they have an affinity for your brand. So Crazy Kevin got the memory recall bit right. Like we've now given him a ton of free exposure just
Yeah.
because his jingle and his tagline are so good. And again, he's solving one single problem well. But he can extend beyond that so that we don't just have brand recall, we have brand affinity. We actually like Kevin and we have a relationship with him.
That's awesome. Yeah, hopefully people can shoehorn that into what they need to be doing as well, and that's just awesome. And marketing seems like it's redundant. It's old, but there's new ways you can do things to put a new spin on things.
Yeah.
QR codes are making a comeback, and
Oh yeah.
put QR codes on your vehicles if you have a company vehicle. Somebody I know that owns a video production company actually just bought a brand new van, and it's white, and he's like, I'm not going to let my children in this van right now. The white van, get it? But he was asking for ideas, what kind of things I should do at wraps, and I mentioned QR code, and he's a video company. I could thought of a couple things, and I'm not going to mention them, but I'm like, no, because that's actually going to distract drivers on the road if he's driving, and we don't want that.
We have self-driving car. We're a year away from self-driving anyway. He'll be fine.
I was thinking about putting like a screen on the back of the car and like showing his commercial, right? Because he's a video production company. But then
That's
people will be watching
hilarious.
that and slam into the back of the van.
Well, let me ask about that though. So what type? There's lots of companies that provide video services. What types of problems is he solving that make him a little bit more unique?
Right. Well, I know what's funny is he calls himself like the Mr. Rogers of video production because, he forms
Oh,
that really close relationship where he cares about his clients who he works with. A
I
lot of
like
it
it.
is company driven or brands, that need him for commercials or for online ads. But he also does, religious stuff like live streaming for churches and those kind of things. So he's basically helping churches get their message into people's homes, I guess, is a problem he's solving. If you can't
Interesting.
come to church, he brings the church to you, if I'm
Wow.
thinking out of the
Yes.
box. And then for the
Yes.
companies, he is helping the brand visualize a message to send out to the audience of what pain they're solving.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. One interesting thing, I don't know necessarily that much about services that are provided to churches, but I would imagine that almost any church of a decent size could use that type of service. The question then would become, so he's solving a painkiller problem, not a vitamin problem. I mean, think about how much additional tithing that could happen, for example, if you're able to reach people that either are homesick or are out of town or just don't feel like coming in but could still give their offering if they stream in. So it's a painkiller problem. But now the problem this gentleman has is there's lots of companies that maybe can provide that service. I like how he's almost taken on this persona or tagline of being the Mr. Rogers of video services, let's say for churches, right? Okay, so that's cool. That makes it a bit more unique. And there's probably a lot of opportunities to build relationships with churches. One of the ways he could do that, that doesn't have anything to do with selling, is how could he create community for these churches? Maybe let's get more specific. Let's think of the the AV person at each church. They probably don't have a team. It might just be one person, right? Which could be a lonely job. Imagine that one AV person at church talking to all these regular humans who don't know what all the tech speak is. What if he could get all the church audiovisual people together once a month at a Panera Bread or somewhere else? He doesn't even have to pay for it. Just get him in the same space, maybe have a speaker, let people network. They'll attribute all that goodwill to him.
Mm-hmm. And he may be doing that. I don't know. I'll ask him. No, that's a great idea. Or even if it's you can't get together in person, start like a Discord community or a Slack channel or a server for that. Yeah, bring them together virtually instead of in person if they can't.
That's good. That's good.
Well, let's talk. So, Kickbox, who I work for. And by the way, folks, if you need email validation, if you're listening to the show, you can use the code HMBT and get 500 free credits. That's something I can offer you. But what Kickbox does is we validate email addresses. So if you're doing email marketing, we make sure you have valid email addresses. The pain we're solving is making sure that you have valid email addresses to send to, which makes sure that your email deliverability is the best it can be. In other words, we want to help you get more of your emails to the inbox rather than spam or not being delivered at all. What are some ideas for Kickbox? Let's use this for some free brainstorming for my employer.
Of course. Right away, I love how you elaborated on that because you mentioned email validation. I've done email marketing for a number of years. I'm not in the weeds like I used to be. So you talk about email validation. It's not something that I think about every day, but I do think about deliverability. I do think about, so for example, I belong to a local gym about 10 minutes from my house. It's fairly new. It's a new franchise, so they didn't have a newsletter. I'd been encouraging them to get a newsletter. They finally got one started, but I didn't know because the email was landing in my spam folder. So I'm hitting the franchise owner up like, hey, when do you guys think you'll start sending out a newsletter? He's like, I sent one out 2 weeks ago. I had to go dig it out of my spam folder. And he was crushed that I hadn't seen. He put all this work into the email. Because it's a new franchise, he's working really hard on retention. So keeping people coming back, keeping them excited, and referrals, getting us to actually spread the word. It's a great experience, by the way. It's a group class. Every day is a group class. I love it. They play music. I feel like I'm going to the club. Feels like I'm young again. I'm not really young again. I just don't have a social life outside of this. So I would love to spread the word for the email. I can't because they don't have email validation. So I love how you really unpackaged the pain, the so what of what you guys do. And I feel like that's a great example. More of us need to be doing that because sometimes the technical terms can fly over our audience's head.
Right. It's with a lot of things. You think just by doing something, you're winning. We're like just creating, sending, and tracking an email, you think you're winning. But there's so much more. There's the subject line, there's the content, your images, and more importantly, getting into the inbox and making sure you're sending to a valid email address. And those are just the staples. And going back to the gym, you might want to reach out to them. Do they have strength training as well, like weights and stuff?
Yeah, they do. They do.
I read a great article talking about how the younger generation, they care so much more about strength training than they do cardio. Even Peloton is updating their app to do more strength training, and Planet Fitness is going to start shifting more towards strength than their
Wow.
cardio equipment. They even said the cardio equipment is so much more expensive, they'd rather spend the money on the weights. You might want to pass on that little bit of strategy too.
That is interesting. That is really interesting. I like that. I like that a lot. You know, as we think about kickbox some more, what I typically like to do, we've talked about the importance of obsessing about your audience. So I am not that familiar with kickbox's audience. This is important, folks. Almost every business uses email. So we could argue that almost every business is a kickbox customer, but not all customers will have the same propensity, the same affinity for, or the same appreciation for solving this problem. So I would ask you, Hank, maybe what's the profile of like an ideal kickbox customer? A customer that they get what you guys do right away, they value it, they're willing to pay the price without haggling, and they stick around for a long time. What does that profile look like?
The no-brainers, the folks that know that they need to use Kickbox and they end up doing it, are the larger customers. Like Capital One, Casper Mattress, and Hotels.com. Those types of brands like Fortune 500, 100. They all know the importance, and they're also collecting hundreds and thousands of email addresses a week, and they want to make sure
Wow.
they're sending to valid people, or people that are creating accounts on their website have a valid
Yes.
email address, and they didn't do a typo or something like that, which is something our API can do. But then there are some smaller companies which are harder to convince that they need to integrate with, say, HubSpot, iContact, Constant Contact, and anybody that comes onto their list or any list they have, they can port it over to Kickbox and validate it and send it back, or even simply upload a list or do one at a time. It's important, but I think that a lot of smaller brands just don't feel like they need that service. They don't want to plug in one at a time because that's free, and they don't want to pay minimum $5 for 100 email addresses. They don't think it's worth it, but in the long run, it hurts your deliverability. Or somebody that mistakenly typed their email address wrong, they're not going to get your email. That's why
Yeah.
it is important for everyone, but it's harder to convince the smaller and mid-sized businesses that they need to do that. It's almost like using something like spell check or grammar check if you're writing a blog post. Like, a lot of people don't. They just write it out and they put it out, and then they go back and fix any mistakes later, or
That's
they
true.
don't want to sign up for Grammarly or something because they
Right.
feel like that's wasted money. But in
Right.
fact, it's not. And Kickbox has our little mascot, Kickbot. We need to use Kickbot a little bit more. Kickbot says maybe we start using him in some of our commercials, right?
Yeah.
Crazy Kickbot. Not kidding.
It always comes back to Crazy Kevin, I tell you. This is fascinating, though, guys. This is fascinating because we've talked about painkiller versus vitamin problems, and for some businesses, this is a vitamin problem. It's a nice to have. Now, we know that realistically, it's actually a painkiller problem long term, but we have to work off of their perception. From their perspective, it's a vitamin problem, and we are going to have to exert so much energy to convince them otherwise. It might be better for us to just go find the people who already are having a headache. They already know they have a headache. They're like, where's the Tylenol? I just need some ibuprofen or something. And let's try to dominate that space first. So the thing that intrigues me about this, if we thought of a large company like a Capital One, they must have 100,000 employees or more. Most of those employees probably have never thought of this problem before. But there's probably a few job titles at that company for whom this is the number one issue in life. And is it like an email marketing manager? Is it like who are the people for whom this is the most important thing?
Yeah, it would depend, right? And I'd put them into categories. Probably most companies, it's going to be new leads that come in for, say, email marketing, right? And then the second one would be anybody that's in client services, because if somebody goes to sign up for or register for an account, which is slightly different, and those would be probably the two people that we need to get ears on to listen to our solution, which we need to spin it so that hey, it's a pain you don't know you have right now. You can treat it with vitamins, but it's not really going to do much. And we have the painkiller ready to go when you need it, but you
Yeah.
probably should be proactive and take the painkiller now before the pain sets in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. And it sort of makes me think, okay, there's these audiences, there's client success, there's email marketing managers, there's a handful of other job titles. We could approach them with the sales pitch right away. And for those who are in the throes of the headache, they'll be like, "Oh, you got Tylenol? Shut up and take my money." That is true. But a lot of them might not be in the throes of the migraine. Maybe it's just starting to creep. They don't necessarily know how bad it's about to get. I wonder whether there are opportunities then for us to partner with maybe complementary businesses that serve those same audiences,
Yeah.
but sell completely products that don't compete with us at all, and sponsor their webinars, sponsor their conferences, pay for meetups and things of that nature. The more we can actually put that email marketing manager, that client success manager at the center of our story and think about their whole experience holistically, not just the email validation problem, but all their problems, and they start to see our brand, Kickbox, as part of their world. Because for us, for Kickbox or Kickbot is at the center of the Kickbox universe, right? But for that one individual, that one email marketing manager, everything revolves around them. I learned this word. Goodness, the word actually escapes me right now. Sonder is the word. Sonder. Hank. So I had the opportunity about 6-7 years ago to do a TEDx talk at a high school, a local high school. Thank you. It was a surreal experience. But the great thing about it was that because it was at a high school, almost all the presenters were high school kids. And this one young lady, her presentation was about Sonder. I'd never heard the word before. My wife and I have been playing Scrabble for years. That would be a great Scrabble word. What does Sonder mean? Sonder is the fact that there's 7 billion people on the planet, and for every single one of us, in our minds, the world revolves around us. It revolves
Especially
around
people in
us.
parking lots. I feel like they all feel that way.
Especially people in parking lots. This is a truism. This is a truism. And so the point is, rather than trying to bring people into the world of our brand and have them revolving around our brand, how can we enter the conversation that's already going on in their minds and enter that convo? So the email marketing manager, yeah, they're thinking about bad email addresses, but they're also thinking about, how they're going to get promoted. They're thinking about open rates. They're thinking about click rates. They're thinking about just a bunch of other things. The more we can be part of their world, the more they'll actually accept us. And then when we want to make the ask, they're like, "Oh, it's Kickbot. Yeah, we're cool. We're cool."
Yeah, and we do a lot of that now. We partner. Actually, we're having a meetup in Austin because most of the team is in Texas. And
Yeah.
we're invited. We have some partners that are coming out, and we're gonna have some workshops, some talks, and then we're gonna do trivia at the end of the night. And we want to basically get ready, get people ready, get marketers ready for the holiday marketing season, and that's what the theme is
Wow.
going to be around that type of conversation with email marketing, and then the trivia is going to be based on holiday and some marketing questions, which is cool. And then we partner with a lot of email service providers because we have integrations. We partner with a lot of e-commerce platforms
Love
as
it.
well,
Love it.
and they help amplify our message, and we do the same for them. But yeah, there's more that we could do, and I love what you just said, like Sonder. I love the fact that, and I say this all the time, a lot of marketers always feel like that they have the best message and they feel like everybody's going to love their message because they created it, right? Where
It's
it's
my
not
baby.
tailored for them, it's tailored for me, and I love it. It's my baby.
Yeah.
But they might, and nobody, everybody's always afraid to say it to your face that you have a horrible baby, right? And
You
they're
got
not
an
gonna
ugly
say
baby.
that. But they might not love it. They might not even like it, and they're not going to look at it. But if you can go into their world and do something to make their day better, their job better, and I've always said, my when I worked for iContact for a long time, and I used to do talks and I used to do workshops, I said my job is to help that person, that marketer, get their promotion, right? By helping them increase their ROI, their conversions on their email campaigns, and help them look good to their boss, their investors, or whatever it is. That is my job.
Yes.
And
Yes.
even though I was in email marketing, when I used to manage accounts, I always told my clients, my job's not done with the open rate, with the click rate, or even getting people to your websites. When they convert and they pay you, that's when I'm happy. I had
Yeah.
one client that this is years ago when you actually could get CD versions of software when you buy it. They
Yeah.
had it in the checkout flow where it was a box that was already checked, and you had to uncheck it if you didn't want it because you have to pay for it. We found that the emails were doing great. They were getting opened. They were getting clicks. They were going to the landing page, but then they were abandoning their carts.
Mm-hmm.
And we made that more streamlined and made it more of an option. You had to actually check the box rather than
Mm-hmm.
uncheck it. And his sales skyrocketed because
Wow.
I knew the full flow of that buyer journey and helped them because I saw that. And they were so appreciative of me being able to help them with that. And, you know, yeah, sure, I'm in marketing. I help the client make money. But if you sell, something else like cars, your end job is to provide a reliable and safe vehicle for someone, whether it's a teen or not or whatever, to drive. I guess that's also part of marketing is solving the need of, if you have like Crazy Kevin Powell,
Mm-hmm.
providing people that don't necessarily have good credit an opportunity to buy a car, but also buy a reliable car that's going to be safe for any family member. We just
Right.
came full circle here. It's just like we just did like a full marketing scheme, right?
Ah, we're such marketing nerds.
We're dangerous when we get together. I feel like what we should do is do this like live once a month and let people come in and give us like, here's my company, and then
I
we
know,
just
right?
brainstorm on it. That'd be awesome. Like, so that leads me to, demand wars, right?
Yes.
Because there's something special about that. And I think you started saying it earlier, but then we hopped
Mm.
into this great conversation. But tell me about demand wars. What is it, and why should people tune in and watch that? I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I appreciate that, Hank. So the idea of Demand Wars is essentially it's a cross between Survivor and Hunger Games. You can tell that I watch too much TV, but it's for a specific audience. It's for demand gen marketers, or let me say, it's created for them. But really, I think business owners and marketers in general will enjoy it. This is an interesting lesson that I just have to sort of digress and mention. You always want to be in on the inside jokes, right? So for demand gen marketers, they're going to understand a lot of the pain and angst that comes from being this profession. What we look to do, so I brought 24 of the demand gen marketers whom I most respect together, and we said, B2B marketing is broken. We have to figure out how to fix it. So I asked them questions about how do we fix this broken timeshare presentation like sort of creature that we've turned marketing into. But the thing is, I made it a game. I made it a competition because who doesn't love competitions where there's risk, you could get voted off the island, there's reward, you could win a cash prize, there's intrigue, there's cliffhangers. There's so much that we could learn from Netflix shows like Survivor and all these cooking competitions, the singing competitions. There's a lot that we could learn from that and infuse into our marketing. I think the greatest creators borrow. They
Mm-hmm.
borrow from what already works in one aspect of life and bring it to a different domain. So, as a small business owner or as a marketer, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just sort of figure out how you could apply that wheel in a different sort of way. And that's what Demand Wars is doing. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll learn how to be a better demand gen marketer.
Don't cry when your favorite demand gen person gets voted off the island. I love it. Folks, tune in. I'm going to leave a link in the show notes for that. But other than that, Balaji, how can people reach out to you, have a conversation with you, and get to know you better?
This has been fun. Thank you for the opportunity, Hank. I can't wait to get together in person. LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. I hang out there pretty much every day. So, yeah, find me on LinkedIn. You'll see the spelling to my name in the show notes or in the episode title. I love meeting people, love to network. I love to geek out over this stuff. So, if you have a marketing challenge that you're noodling over, hit me up in the DMs. Let's talk about it.
And most people that know me, and I think you even know this, I like to have conversations with people that reach out to me on LinkedIn. I don't accept blind invites. And maybe you do, Bolaji, I don't know. But send them a note. Just say, hey, I saw you on Hank's podcast. It'll give it a little bit more of a true feeling, and that you really want to connect with him because you met him through this show. You're just not some random person that is trying to sell him or something like that. I was trying to go back to the theme that we had going earlier around what we were talking about with bad marketing, but I can't think of it right now because I'm thinking about all the other great ideas that we had. We helped 3 or 4 brands today, right? We gave exposure to a couple.
Yeah. No, this was great. This was great. We definitely should do this again. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there's a round 2 in the works, and maybe we can get together and do it live somewhere. That would be awesome.
Oh, we're doing it live, everybody.
Doing it live.
Shout out Bill O'Reilly.
And we'll bring the painkillers too.
There you go.
All right, folks. Until next time, watch Demand Wars.